pastors, ministry leaders, and future ministers. I'm Sehi, and I'm with Crystal here. We're so excited you're joining our conversation today.
Our podcast is designed to offer tangible leadership competencies that you can apply directly to your ministry context.
That's right. And today in our Grow Together segment, we're going to be talking about identifying your allies or champions. We talked about this briefly in our last episode, so today we're going to expound on that. So Katie Cole, in her book, Developing Female Leaders, she differentiates between male mentors and male champions, sponsors, in other words. Mentors are those who share wisdom and kind of gives you the know-hows to help you develop into better leaders. But sponsors, they go even beyond and farther than that. And they champion you by advocating for you, not only in private, but also in public. And these men, they know how to open doors for you that nobody can or even would.
Yes. I've been so grateful in my life to have both mentors and champions, and many times men that operate in both.
Yeah.
I think about my boss right now in Chi Alpha, Dr. Harvey Herman, and he wrote the book that Chi Alpha has used for the last 30, 40 years, and so he's definitely a leader among us. And he always has his office door open. And whether I have a question about revelations, I've had an emotional day, or I have a ministry issue I need to talk through, his door is always open, and he always gives such great wisdom, such a mentor in my life. Jim Bradford has been one of those mentors. John Bueno, some great men of God who have really led me along the way. I've also had those champions that you mentioned, those that advocate for you and kind of take it to the next level. I'll never forget, I was in a Chi Alpha staff meeting and I had been asked to do the devotional. And really, the Holy Spirit moved during this staff devotional. And after that time, Gary Pascal, who leads one of our SALT conferences in Chi Alpha, after the devotional, he pulled me to the side and he said, "Crystal, I've been waiting for the right SALT speaker for this year, and I believe that's you." And that was such a meaningful moment to me because it was the first time that a door had been opened for a platform at that level. So I'm very grateful to Gary Pascal. Chris Rayleigh, more recently, has opened doors for me. And both Sehi and I, we can't talk about advocation without talking about our husbands.
Oh, yes, thank you.
And so we are grateful. Not everyone has husbands in ministry, but both of us do. And they've shared platforms and open doors that we cannot minimalize.
That's true. And I have a few number of sponsors and advocates and champions in my life, but I didn't start that way. You didn't start that way either. And maybe some of you that are watching, like, oh, that's good for you, Crystal and Sehi, but I have nobody, And I just want to remind you that we still struggle many years trying to find that one person, like, God, can't you send just one person to affirm my calling and invest in me because I am dying here to grow. But that time will come. And so we're going to just really talk about it, how to find those people. But these spiritual mentors and champions that I have in my life, there's some commonalities throughout. The first, they modeled leadership for me. I saw how they led, and they taught me how to lead like them, and sometimes even better than them. They encouraged me to do better than them. And here's an amazing thing. They share their leadership platforms with me. That's, I think, the hardest piece for male champions to do. Those allies, who would just say, it's easy for people to say, well done, you have calling. But it's another thing and a harder thing for them to do. Hey, come over here. I want you to do this.
Yes.
You can do this, and why don't you do it for me or on my behalf, and now you can do it on your own. That's a huge champion, and so you need those people in your life. So how can you find male allies in your life? Well, number one, pray for the right match within your immediate network. Now, don't rush into it just to find a token ally. You know what it's like to be a token person, right? In the leadership room. Don't find a token ally and rush into it. Pray about it. Take time. This is somebody who's going to invest in your life for the rest of your journey, maybe for long term. God ordained people, somebody that God has called for this mission to invest in you, somebody whose life will be also enriched by this relationship. Not just you, but his life will also be enriched by you. And here's the thing, not every man with a title or the position of authority will be your ally. So keep that in mind. But sometimes your best allies are right next to you, but they're hidden. So you're gonna have to find them, excavate them. Someone who's been there long enough to see your highs and the lows, to see your emotional ups and downs, who have seen your best sides and the ugliest side, and still chooses to love you, invest in you, encourage you, pray for you. There's somebody out there that's just around you. You gotta see that. And especially someone who's not afraid to call you out when you're in the wrong. Isn't that a precious relationship? Someone who say, you're doing something wrong. You're kind of off. I want to talk about this. So those guys, those allies are just right around you. So open your eyes wide and big and look for those people that God placed in your life.
Yes, such good words, Sehi. Secondly, we want to identify different types of male leaders. Now, this is something I've learned from some of my female colleagues and leaders in our movement. There are 3 different basic type of male leaders that we work with. First of all, the one that just tolerate female leadership. And basically they just kind of let you do your thing. They're just like, all right, whatever you want, just go ahead and do it. They're not, you don't feel that they're for or against, they're just there. Secondly, we have our male leaders that celebrate us. And I'm really thankful for this group. I think we need that. We need to know that we're being celebrated. But oftentimes at the heart of that is really what's in it for them. It's you sometimes, you make me look better because there's more women at the table or, that kind of a thing. And then we go to the last male leader, and that's the one that advocates for us.
That's the one you want to
That's the one. And it's really not about what's in it for them, it's what's in it for you. And when you find that, you find gold.
Yes.
And I am a strong believer that in this season of the journey of women in ministry, we really need to help walk with our brothers, those that are celebrating, and help them become advocates.
Yes.
Because we need more advocates. Sometimes our male colleagues, they think they're doing a great job because they're celebrating us. They don't realize that extra little steps they need to take to advocate, not just because they love their sisters, but because they know that the leadership table will be better.
That's great. And here's the third one. If you've identified your allies, pursue them. Now, that sounds like really a no-brainer, but it doesn't happen as often as it should. So, and let's be honest, as women, we're not really that great at self-promoting, right? And so as women that have been called to leadership or maybe even gifted, you have all the qualifications, but you don't want to say, hey, I have something that I would like to offer you. We don't approach them like that. We don't pursue them. Instead, what do? We work so hard behind the scene, right? And just very quietly and silently hoping that some male leaders and allies, those champions, will recognize us and say, oh, Crystal is an amazing hard worker. I want to just have a meeting with her and invest in her. Well, that does happen, but not as frequently as it should. And so as women who are called to higher leadership, then you should be the one who will pursue them. And a lot of times those allies, high capacity allies, are busy people. And so even if they would recognize your potential, they weren't going to say, or maybe even think about investing in you unless you reach them first. Yes. You got to be in their radar. And now for me, a couple of the male mentors and champions that are serving in a high capacity level, they're in my life today because of the fact that I reached out to them first as like somebody, as a learner with the heart of a student and learner, and said, I have something that I really admire about you that I would like to learn something from you, very specific. And don't just be general. Yes. And say, can I have a meeting with you? Would you be my mentor? What does that mean? I mean, those high capacity leaders, they're busy. So you can't say, can you commit your rest of your life to me and invest in me? And that's not going to happen. So you want to be specific. Like, how long do you want this person to invest in you? And what is the goal and purpose? And what specific skill sets you want to learn or experiences? As the more specific your desires are, the better it is for them to be able to help you along the way. So be active and proactive in reaching out to them first.
Yeah, that's so good. And I just think about one of my allies and mentors, Dr. Jim Bradford,
Yeah.
and he always says, you know, if because he's such a gifted leader, lots of people want to be mentored, but he always says, you better come prepared.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he's going to be silent. And so I think what you mentioned, being prepared as a mentee, you don't want your mentor to have to do the work. You want to do the work so that that make it as easy as possible for the allies that work with us.
Yeah.
So do the pre-work so that the time can be the most valuable.
Yes.
So that's so good. The fourth one is search for additional allies beyond your normal context. This is really important, especially we have many people listening that are in rural cities, maybe church planting in a rural environment, and you really don't have very many allies in your ministry context. And I always suggest going outside of your ministry world. I've mentioned this before, but there might be a principal in your city, potentially the mayor, depending how rural where you are in your context, maybe the chief of police. There might be somebody there that can really help be an ally for you, not just in the ministry context, but as we're ministering in communities. Sehi, I've always admired your example. We're just not pastoring our congregation, we're pastoring cities. And so having those collaborative working relationships with people outside of our ministry context can really help grow us as leaders.
Yeah, that's true. And some of my allies that are non-ministry male leaders are in my life because I've been connected in my city and outside the church world or Christian world. And that's kind of a hard thing for us as ministry leaders. We are kind of living in our own bubbles, and sometimes it's hard to get out. I sometimes forget that I was not born into a Christian bubble. I came from a non-Christian world. And so that now that I have been in the Christian world for a while, it's harder to get out of that, to connect. And so I really encourage you to get plugged in the world, right? In the world outside the church, then that's where you will find your allies. And some of those people that are non-ministry male leaders who will recognize your value and potential, and they actually reach out to you. I was surprised by that. And so who knows, your next allies might be. Well, we're so encouraged by this conversation, and thank you for joining our talk today. And I hope that you stay plugged in through our Facebook and Instagram, all the other social medias. And until every woman fulfills her ministerial call, just remember, we're in this together.